So what's in this big giant stimulus package for me or for you? We'll talk about all of that on the program, along with, of course, a recap of the past week that was in the markets. Once again, another week of the market volatility being at an all-time high, although for this past week, we saw that the volatility was actually on the plus side of things. So we'll certainly have much to cover on the program as we do each and every week. This is Dollars and Cents. My name is Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning, and we are doing this once again in a different format in this day and age with the virus mitigations that we're all doing and the way that society is. We're actually, once again, not in the studio. I am recording this program actually from the office, and the producer is over at the radio station. And for right now, we're not able to go into the studio during the course of the weekend, so we are actually taping this program on Friday morning. So a lot of what we'll be talking about in the program, we're operating under the assumption that the House, in fact, will pass the legislation that is the virus program that is estimated to be $2 trillion of a legislative stimulus package. So with that assumption, we will certainly dig into some of the details in that legislation that have become known. It's hard to get a full version of the legislation read that quickly because it's a big piece of legislation and they are fast tracking it along very, very quickly. So, but we'll certainly attempt to dig into that here on the program today. So, some interesting things in the package itself. I mean, obviously you hear about the large portion that is being spent and set aside. I would caution you that the number sounds really big, and it is. And the point of that is that the attempt there is to try and make as much of a difference in the economy as possible by injecting a tremendous amount of funds into the economy. It's not all just handouts, by the way. I know it's getting described as a $2 trillion package, but the reality is that a lot of the portions of the $2 trillion amount are in fact loans. And loans have a tendency, or well, they should all have a tendency to get repaid. I think back to the TARP program that was the $700 billion program back in 2008 that was intended to shore up the balance sheets of banks and lending institutions back then. And what's interesting about that program, and this is the part that people sort of forget, is they only remember the $700 billion price tag. They forget that within a 3-year period of time, there was a payback of 100% of that money. So I think, when we hear the number 2 trillion, and obviously it's a big number, understand that the government isn't totally going on the hook for the 2 trillion because a lot of it is in the form of loans. Some of it, of course, is not, and that is certainly the case for the biggest piece that affects folks on an individual basis, and that is the checks that are going to get either mailed out or deposited, or maybe a debit card or something like that. They're still trying to figure out and explore how much of, or what's the form of delivery for those dollars, because just printing everybody a check takes a lot of time. And so they're really trying to figure out what that might look like. And I don't know that they've come to any firm conclusion on it, but I would be checking your bank account, check your mail, check your mail for a debit card. All of those are options that are certainly on the table. But the $1,200 is just that. It is a $1,200 sort of no strings attached type of payment that you'll get from the federal government. Very similar to what they did back in 2009 with the $600 payment, if you remember that. That was just a check that sort of showed up in the mail. That one went across the board to everybody. The reality is this one is got some income testing in it. So just to get that on the table with y'all, it's $1,200 a person, and then per child, it's $500 per child. If you are single and making under $75,000, then you're going to get the entire $1,200. If you're a couple, married couple making under $150,000, then again, you're going to get $2,400. As your income starts to go up, it starts to phase out. So above $100,000, that single person not eligible for this direct payment of the $1,200. For a married couple, income above $200,000, not eligible for any part of this payment. So the income numbers are based upon your 2018 tax return. It's not on your 19 tax return, because many people obviously are still in the process of filing the 2019 tax return, but the numbers are based upon the 18 tax return numbers. So just be aware of that. That is a payment that is coming direct to you. So you're not going to have to declare it as income. You're not going to have to repay it or anything like that. It is a direct check to you. So that's 300 billion, if you will, of the 2 trillion is accounted for in those direct checks. Another 250 billion of the 2 trillion is in unemployment. We saw this past week where unemployment claims jumped by like 3 million people. It was just an unbelievable record that was set this past week in terms of the jump in unemployment claims by over 3 million people over the prior week. The next biggest chunk of this stimulus package is the 250 billion that's been set aside for unemployment. What's interesting about the unemployment is generally the unemployment extends to people that work for employers. The provisions in this stimulus package also extend that to people that are self-employed. So let's say that you are an Uber driver or something like that. Obviously your business has diminished and gone to zero, and so consequently the unemployment benefits were expanded to pick up that type of job, which is very unique and not something that unemployment typically covers. So they expanded unemployment to sort of pick up folks that it would not typically pick up, and then they also extended the payment period. Typically unemployment lasts 26 weeks. They extended that to be for a period of 39 weeks. And most importantly, they added an extra $600 per week for that 39 week, for that, so that 4-month period of time. For the first 4 months until July 31, that is where you will be getting that extra $600. So between now and July 31, if you're collecting unemployment, it's going to be for a much higher amount. Typically unemployment only around like $300. That doesn't really cover it much. So the notion of adding the extra $600 is to get things closer to what the average person makes in a week, which is around that $1,000 number. So that was the point of trying to get it to that higher number. So those are the two biggies of the stimulus plan: the direct checks, number one, and then the expansion of the unemployment benefits. A lot more, though, that we need to kind of work through. So we will continue that, but we'll do so after the break. So stay tuned through the break, and we'll continue on the conversation of what's in that stimulus bill for you next here on the program Dollars and Cents. This is Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning, News Radio, WFLA, Orlando.